He played the opening like a book, the middle game like a magician, and the end game like a machine. This used to be said about Capablanca, the third world champion. Well, it wouldn't be wrong if we said the same thing about Nihal Sarin today. The 15-year-old was playing at the World Cup 2019. It was his debut today. And guess what? He won his game against the higher rated opponent Jorge Cori, Peruvian number 1, and a very strong player rated 2676. The game was amazing, and this is something that I would like to show you right now. So Nihal was playing with the white pieces and he opened the game with 1e4. Now you must remember that the World Cup has classical section and there are 2 games. So if you score 1.5, you progress to the second round. If it's tied 1-1, then the match goes into the rapid section and then the blitz section and so on. So Nihal with the white pieces definitely had to put some pressure on his opponent because a draw with white is not really a great result. His opponent played the Sicilian, knight to f3, knight c6, and we reached the Kalashnikov after e5. And when I searched Jorge Cori's games in this opening, I found that he had played 7 games till date and he had won all 7 of them. Okay, so that was definitely something that Nihal had looked at before the game. If your opponent has 7 wins out of 7, you cannot be taking this opening lightly. Knight b5, threatening knight d6 check. So d6 and now c4. So this is the difference between, let's say, Sveshnikov and Kalashnikov. That let's say if here you played knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, a6, knight a3, we transpose into the Sveshnikov because the knight is already on f6. But because white has played here d6, e5 and d6 without knight f6, the knight is still on b1 and not on c3, so it leaves your c pawn free, and that's why Nihal played the move c4. Now he has greater control over the d5 square, but at the same time his d4 square is a little weak. Bishop e7, and this is a smart move, bishop e7, because you are waiting for knight to come to c3 and only then play a6, so that the knight is pushed back to the a3 square. These are small opening subtleties. Bishop e6, knight came to c2, so the knight was anyway not doing much on a3. Nihal tries to bring it to e3. Rook goes to c8. And here comes a very interesting move, bishop to e2. Now this is interesting because the way the game develops. Let's assume that Cori played knight f6 here, then it's just a normal game. Let's say you play bishop e3, castle, castle. This looks quite normal. But bishop e2, the Peruvian GM played knight to a5 and he's attacking the pawn on c4 with 3 pieces all of a sudden, and Nihal has only 1 bishop that is defending it. So that means he must play b3 here, which he did in the game. But Cori immediately, he took just 29 seconds for this move and he played it. Now, very interesting to note that when this position was reached, Nihal played the move bishop e2 after 20 minutes of thinking. So that means it could seem that you are not well prepared in this position and you are playing bishop e2, but that's not true. I think Nihal was very well prepared and he was just trying to fool his opponent. Okay, knight a5 was played after 25 minutes, so Cori also thought for quite some time, and after b3 played b5. So my question to you is, you need to pause the video and try to think what would you do here. Why did Nihal play bishop e2, which makes absolutely no sense in terms of defending this c4 and this queenside play? So for example, if here you knew this is happening, you could play b3 first, so that when opponent goes something like knight a5, you can already defend your knight on c3. And now b5 is no longer possible, and b3 has been played many times. So bishop e2 can be a conceptual mistake, because after knight a5 b3 it allows black to play b5. So my question to you is, what should white do here? Okay, I would be very surprised if you didn't know what the right solution is here and you found it, because I found it really tough to understand when the game was going on. Nihal played the move knight to e3, which is really a very strong move, and if you came up with the move knight d5, equally good. The concept is the same. The point is, after b into c4, you're going to play bishop to e3, and after cb3 you're going to give up the pawn with ab3. And here, let's say a position like this, where you have dominating knights, two bishops and a rook which is well placed. So Nihal played the move knight to e3 here, and Cori said, well, I'm going to take a pawn. Now b4, which looks very natural, after knight c6 is not so good, because you are attacking b4 and then knight d4 is threatened. But here comes a very nice move, knight e d5. Cori played knight f6, but the real point of this entire variation is shown here. After cb3, you want to take ab3 back. And this reminds me of one line which I am going to show you just now. After ab3, the rook gets activated along the a file. The bishop starts to put pressure on the a6 pawn. The other bishop is going to soon move to e3 and come to b6 and create so much pressure. So this was Nihal's entire point. He was not worried about b5, because he was ready to give b into c4 and, oops, that was a long arrow, c into b3. He's ready to give up two pawns to get the rook activated from a1. So what was the opening that I was reminded of? I think it was a very famous game, Kasparov versus Korchnoi, London 1983. It was one of those games where Kasparov lost to Korchnoi. It was knight f3, b6, and we reach an interesting position in this Queen's Indian. c5, bishop g5, Kasparov is white, Korchnoi black, and here Kasparov took d into c5. Clearly he felt that, Korchnoi would take back, and then he could play, say, queen e2 or even castle, and white is doing absolutely fine. But Korchnoi simply played castles, and after c into b6 he took ab6, and now you see the similarities between what Nihal is trying to do. The rook is activated along the a file, and somehow this file opens up for the other rook to come, and a pawn's deficit is not at all seen. This game was really very famous, and Korchnoi went on to win. You also get the c5 square for the knight. Sometimes the knight could jump like a5 to c4. So for a pawn you get excellent compensation, and this was the same what Nihal is trying to do. Knight f6, bishop e3, and after bishop d5 was played, but imagine, I think here black could have played knight d7, but here b4, knight c6 and queen d2, I think white is still definitely in control of the position. So bishop e3, bishop into d5, knight takes d5, and knight d5 was played. You can't take on e4 because bishop b6 is very strong. After knight d5, queen d5, castles, castles. White is simply better. Look at these two bishops, and over here this knight is just too weak, and it cannot move because then white will just take bishop into c4 and get a better position. So he had to take cb, and now after bishop a6, a fantastic move, is going to come up, not this move. Bishop a6 is just a normal one. The point is that I could even take a b3 here, and this should also have been a very good position for white. But bishop a6, and now there were many lines, let's say even rook b8 was possible, but everything leads to the same problems, you know, for black, that is his knight on a5. In the game, Cori played rook to c3, and here is my next question to you: what would you do here as white? So Nihal wants to force the situation on the queen side. He doesn't want to take a b3 because after knight b3, the knight could at least come back to d4, and it should be around equal. He played in the game rook fb1. Well done if you found this move, because of course after this knight on a5 is nearly trapped. Knight c6, bishop b6, and you can see complete domination. This rook is gone. These two bishops are amazing along with the rooks. If you didn't find rook fb1 and if you came up to the conclusion of rook ac1, also very well done, because after rook takes, once again we reach the same thing. This knight is going to be trapped very soon on a5. Okay, rook fb1, knight went to c6, rook into b3. Here a into b3 was also very good. Takes, queen b3, knight d4, and he took, and bishop c4. The material is even, you have an opposite colored bishop position, but it's just so much better for white. This bishop is looking down the a2 g8 diagonal. You have an outside passer running down the board, and these pawns are actually quite weak. Queen to a5, and now here is my next question to you: what would you play here as white? Think very carefully, because this move that was played by Nihal actually reminds me of the Kramnik camp that I attended just a few days ago. This is what Kramnik taught in the camp, and which Nihal has, you know, he didn't attend the camp, but I think he already knew about it. So white to move, what would you do? So there are many active ways to play this position. You can play a4, you can put your bishop to d5, many things. But Nihal found that right now, instead of doing something concrete, I need to improve my position a little bit more. And so he played the move g3. And this is really a classy move. This is a move of an experienced master, not a 15-year-old boy. Okay, but Nihal is an experienced master even though he's 15. So you can expect this from him. Bishop to g5, and now comes another very nice move, king to g2. And these little moves are what make all the difference. You create a luft for your king, you bring it on a light square, and then now all your pieces are on light squares away from this bishop. g6, bishop d5, queen c3, and here white is not afraid of queen exchange. If you take, I can take. Now this is hanging, I can go back and then start pushing my a pawn. So king g7, rook d3, queen c5. Okay, if you take here, once again the same thing. So queen c5 was played, a4, bishop d8, queen b2, bishop b6. Here rook b3, and a repetition was done here after rook d3. Maybe rook b7 was much stronger with the idea of bringing your queen from e2 to f3. But okay, rook d3, and now Nihal didn't repeat. He played h4, rook c8, queen e2, and you can see slowly the game is shifting towards the king side. The queen is coming to g4, rook to f3, and with the h pawn, it's going to be a powerful attack. Bishop a7, h5, queen c1, queen goes to g4, rook c7, and now rook f3. d3, something has to be done for white because he's just getting crashed, you know, like Soon this pawn is going to come to h6. It's possible queen may go to h4, queen f6 check may come in. So many threats. So he decided, okay, let me play d3 and at least free my bishop. Now it would be a mistake if you took on d3 because of bishop into f2, and this tactic always has to be kept in mind. Queen g1 is coming up, and if you take rook c2 is just dangerous. I think black is already winning. So queen h4, Nihal was alert, and now you can't really push your pawn to d2 because h6 will finish off the game. Queen is coming to d8 next. So bishop d4 stopping queen f6. And here is my next question to you. What would you play here as white? I think if in the entire game there was one point where we could say Nihal didn't play up to the mark, it's this one. The right move was bishop into f7. Congratulations, if you found it, then you played better than Nihal did. But remember, it was the 39th move, very less time on the clock, and sometimes it's not so easy. The point is, of course, very simple once you see it. h6 is coming, and king cannot go back. Queen d8 is a mate, and if you take on h6, then rook f7 ends the game. Bishop f7, you might ask, what's the threat? Because I can just ignore it, but then there's nothing constructive for black to do. He cannot push because then h6 comes up, and if you make a move like, let's say, queen h6, then I can just come back, and now my queen can go to d8, followed by a lot of problems for you. Nihal took on d3. It's still winning, but it gave black some chances. Right now bishop f2 of course is a blunder because of h6. Very good, because if you go back it's a mate, and if you take here I can exchange the queens and win the f2 bishop. So therefore he played here g5, h6 check, king f8, and queen h5. 41 moves were over. Right now 40 moves, so both sides got half an hour extra. And now after bishop into f2, I think anyone would have got a bit nervous here, but not Nihal. He played the extremely calm and powerful move rook to f3. If you took king into f2, then after rook c2, king f3, it looks like white is going to win this, because after queen f1, king g4, you might feel that queen e2 check is met with rook f3 and there is a mate here, no more checks possible. But here comes a powerful move for black. Can you find it? Black to move and only way to draw. Well done if you found the move rook f2. Good job. Now you are defending f7 and also threatening queen e2. And I think over here white is in big trouble, but white has one move, only one move to draw the game. And what is it? Take your time, think a bit, because it's not very easy. But if you think that, okay, queen e2 check is a big threat, I must stop it, then you will find the move, and that is rook to d2. If you take here, I can now, there is no mate, so I can take on g5, queen e2, king h4. And because white is threatening a mate here, you have to give a perpetual check. So those were some crazy lines if you took on f2, but Nihal just ignored it. He played rook f3, let black give couple of checks, and now his king is absolutely safe. The queens had to be exchanged, and here you can see this king is amazing, much better than its counterpart. This bishop is superior to its counterpart. This rook and bishop work in perfect tandem to attack the f7 point. The black rook is passive. You have an outside passed pawn. Well, what else do you need? This is just very easy technique, and look how Nihal converts it without any difficulties. a6, you can't take the pawn because after rook into f7, king e8, this is just game over. And if f6 was played in the game, now just simply improving the position, bringing the king, placing the pawn on g4, and now bishop d5, you can also threaten to just come in. So a6 was taken, but after h7 fell, and now everything is falling. King g6, h7, h8 is coming up. Cori resigned the game. I think it was a phenomenal effort by Nihal. If you agree with me, then let me know in the comment section how you found about his play. I just have a couple of photos to show you. This is Nihal on your left and Cori George on the right. Cori is also a youngster, but he's already very close to 2700, a very talented player. And this is one of Nihal's pictures from today's game. He's wearing this white shirt with Akshay Kalpa. He's recently just signed a big contract with this company. And this is one more where he's wearing a suit. So looking very smart is Nihal. He only needs a draw tomorrow to qualify and move ahead in the second round. Who will be his opponent there? Let's not get ahead of ourselves and wait for tomorrow's game. For now, we can all be happy that he played a really great game. Thank you so much. This is Sagar Shah signing off.